On Cox Channel 37, Comcast 27 in Reston, and around the world at fcac.org/Radio Fairfax. This is a weekly show that provides you the very best in alternative news and views with your host, Radio Paul. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Radio Paul's Radio Rants. I am supposed to have AronRa on and Ray Comfort.
Hello.
Gentlemen.
Hello.
I wanted to get the show started, but I'd like to have each of you just kind of give a minute to talk a little bit about who you are. And since Ray is the stranger in a strange land here, I'd give him the first shot at that. Ray, who are you? What are you about?
Well, my name is Ray Comfort. I'm originally from New Zealand. You might notice a very slight accent. I was born down under, came to the U.S. in 1989. Been living in Southern California for about a year. Sorry, for 23 years, should I say. I'm a Christian. I'm an author. I write books. I co-host a television.
The problem is we have so many people listening online. It's killing our server. And
I'm sorry.
This is great. I mean, it's good news. The bad news is we're cutting into time here, so I'm going to keep this puppy moving along. I'm using a route around for it right now, and I apologize to all of you. So you're a Christian minister. You've been one for how many years?
Commonly known as the Banana Man by many atheists. Richard Dawkins affectionately calls me an idiot. And that's about it. I don't know if you heard what I was talking about before, but before I got disconnected, I co-host a television program called The Way of the Master with actor Kirk Cameron that goes to 123 countries. It's on 52 networks. I'm an author. I write books, and I publish gospel tracts, and I talk with atheists, and I enjoy it.
Good. Aaron, to pronounce it correctly. What's your story?
I'm the Texas State Director of American Atheists. And as such, I'm not just an atheist activist. I'm an anti-theist. That means I'm opposed to religion. And the reason that I am is that religion has historically almost always been an obstacle against any progressive advance, be it in medical science, education, civil rights, birth control, disease control, environmental issues, or humane justice. I rally to preserve the separation of church and state, plainly established by the Founding Fathers, because whenever religion has had rule over law, the result has been an almost automatic violation of human rights.
I have a question for each of you, and then I'm going to open it up for you to debate each other. And my question basically revolves around morality for each of you. Now, Ray, I hear Christians often say there cannot be morality without a God. While I could go on with many examples like the one I'm about to give, for the sake of time, I think I can sum it up quickly. I saw a video where an owner of 3 dogs walks into a room and is holding an empty food wrapper. She asks who got into the treats. 2 of the dogs wag their tails and look at the 3rd dog, who goes into complete submission, whimpering and hiding its head. Clearly, 2 of the dogs had done nothing wrong, knew it, and furthermore, they knew who did. The 3rd dog knew that it was guilty, and it expressed it. Now, you're not going to say that dogs read the Bible and follow the Word of God. How do you explain an animal like a dog, who has a sense of morality, loyalty, love, etc., in the absence of divine knowledge? How do you reconcile that animals are born with some sense of morality, yet humans have to get that same sense of morality from a Bible?
Well, firstly, I just got to say I love dogs. I've got a dog myself, and I think they're really great. Particularly my friend, I missed your name, but I'm anti-religion also. I abhor religion. I think religion has been responsible for horrible atrocities down through the ages, the Catholic Inquisition, the Catholic Crusades against the Muslims. If you look down history, it's just soaked in blood and hypocrisy and pedophilia and televangelists. And I'm not anti-theist, I'm anti-religion, and I totally agree with you. And also, of course, there could be morality without God. I don't know if he's been telling you there isn't no morality without God. Yeah, there's a lot of very moral atheists, and I commend them for morality, and I don't know what they're talking about when you say there can be no morality without God.
Okay, Aaron, my question is also for you on the issue of morality. I hear how some atheists, often argue that atheism has a better sense of morality than religion because of things like war and exploitation and other like arguments that are done in the name of religion. While I agree it is important to follow truth and evidence, could one also argue that atheists are in fact no more moral than someone who is religious? I ask this because of people who I have a great deal of respect for, like Christopher Hitchens, who did things like advocate the Iraq War, where it has now claimed over 1 million lives. And that's not an isolated incident. There's many cases where atheists have rationalized illegal and destructive wars and other forms of repression. It seems to me that even people who set aside belief in a God are every bit as capable of rationalizing the very same abuses as their religious counterparts. Does this mean that the argument of morality has more to do with the human condition than religion versus non-religion? What makes atheism stand apart from religion in this specific area, if you think it does?
Well, just as you wouldn't, I don't think in most cases you wouldn't generalize theism as being, or most theists would not lump themselves in with, Hindus and China and some of the other more distant religions. You have many different factions of atheism too. I mean, because atheism is a herd of cats. There's several different types that would fit into that classification. I represent a group of empirical rationalists who have a very deep social conscience. We are progressive, and while I could point out many different subsets, a lot of people get bored at this. I just want to say that there's very little that atheists all hold in common other than the fact that we don't share a belief in God. And a sad lot of atheists aren't skeptics either. I know of atheists that believe in homeopathy and a whole bunch of pseudoscientific woo and things of that sort. So I don't just advocate a lack of, what I do is I advocate a lack of belief on faith, and I support reason and rationality, empiricism, skepticism.
Excellent. Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and move us into the part of the show where you guys get to ask each other questions and basically state your positions. And because I let Ray go first, this time I'm going to let Aaron take the first jab here. Aaron, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to, in the 3 or 4 minutes, kind of bring up? What's your first question?
And we're focusing on morality, are we?
No, that was my personal question. If you feel there's something that you're dying to ask Ray, or you want to bring up about Ray, or if you feel that you need to just get out there, go for it.
Well, I'm completely good with the whole morality thing because it's a central issue in my life as well. I mean, I focus a lot on the science because I want people to understand the way things are. And believe me, Ray and I will have a lot to talk about there. And I want to thank you for creating this general topic. I mean, God versus atheism. I note that you didn't say theism versus atheism. You did God versus atheism. So technically, I guess I win by default. Okay, so Ray, I'll start with one real ambiguous question. I mean, George Harrison, the guitarist for the Beatles, was a Bhakti Hindu. At one time, all the Beatles explored Krishna consciousness as they traveled with His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Over time, Lennon, McCartney, and Ringo each individually abandoned their faith and became atheists, but Harrison continued to maintain a personal relationship with his sweet Lord for the rest of his life.
Could I just stop you there for a moment?
What's that?
I've just written a book called The Beatles, God and the Bible that comes out in November, published by WorldNet Daily. None of the Beatles were atheists. They originally were atheists when they were young, in about 1964, but all of them acknowledged the existence of God. I can guarantee you that none of the Beatles were atheists.
And in the last few years, you're telling me that Paul McCartney and in the last few years of his life, John Lennon didn't both advocate atheism?
No, he was very anti-Christian, but they were never atheists. I've got so many quotes about from John Lennon about God. Same with George Harrison, he was still chanting Hare Krishna the moment he died. But Ringo Starr just turned 70, and he's talking about the fact that he's had a born-again experience. I don't believe that for a moment because I don't see fruit in his life. And same with Paul McCartney. He prayed when his wife was ill with cancer openly. So, no, none of them were atheists, but they did profess atheism about 1964, but they backslid from atheism.
Backslid from atheism. Thank you for putting it that way. So Harrison famously said that if there's a God, I want to see him. It's pointless to believe something without proof, and Krishna consciousness and meditation are methods where you can actually obtain God perception. You can actually see God and hear him, play with him. It might sound crazy, but he is actually there, actually with you. Now, at one time, as you know, John Lennon believed much the same thing before he broke from religion and wrote the atheist anthem, Imagine. Now, two questions based on that.
Oh, hang on a minute. Could I just stop you there, too? I've just published, we just got a documentary coming out called Genius, and it's on John Lennon, and it's all around the subject of his song, Imagine. Aaron, if I said to you, imagine there's no New York, it's easy if you try, I'm not saying New York doesn't exist. I'm saying it does exist, but imagine that it doesn't. And that's what John Lennon's saying. Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try. So it's not an atheist anthem. It's just that people don't really think about the words that he wrote.
It definitely is an atheist anthem because it talks about how much better things would be if we didn't have religion.
I hate wars and religion and all the stuff that comes with it. So,
and what is there to hate about religion? I mean,
religion? Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, there's nothing to love about religion. I hate it. So we've got something there in common. So absolutely.
Okay, so
and I just
what makes religion wrong then?
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's horrible.
Okay.
Aaron, I just got to say something about American Atheists. I was a platform speaker at American Atheists in Florida in 2001, and you guys treated me so kindly, and I just want to acknowledge that. Ron Barrier was so nice to me, and when I arrived, you had a hotel room for me and even a fruit basket. And so I really appreciated the fact that you allowed me to be a platform speaker at your national convention in 2001. So if you've got contacts there, would you please pass on my sincere thanks for their kindness to me?
Mm-hmm. So on the question that I was leading up to,
sure,
where Harrison maintained his Hinduism, and as I said, I just want to start with something very ambiguous, where Harrison maintained his Hinduism, where the others fell away from that, would you think that Harrison ever denied whether Lennon was a true Hindu on the excuse that Lennon never really knew the Lord the way that Harrison did?
No, I wouldn't. I couldn't address that subject. I haven't got a clue.
All right, how about this one? Considering the extent of Harrison's personal relationship with his God and comparing that to yours, have you ever actually seen Jesus and or heard his voice audibly speaking to you the way that Krishna spoke to George?
No, if I did, I'd check myself in to see a psychiatrist. I don't hear voices, and anyone that does should really see a psychiatrist and get some help.
Well, that's very good to hear. And I had some other questions, too. I mean, on your interviews with all these people, when you give these your perceptions on what evolution is, it's very disturbing to me that knowing that you've been doing this for so many years and that you've talked to so many people for so long about this subject, surely somebody has explained to you at some point that evolution pertains to populations rather than individuals.
Yes,
and so, for example, you wouldn't have a fish alone, and it wouldn't be male, running out, catching a couple breaths, and trying to grow lungs. You understand that we're talking about populations and population mechanics.
Could you explain it to me? Let me just tell you, I'm a skeptic when it comes to evolution. I don't believe in it. So if you could explain to me what you mean about populations and why is it that we have 1.4 million different kinds of animals, each with male and female, and each reproducing after its own kind. Why did evolution do that?
We don't. On 2 points, you're wrong there.
Okay, straighten me out.
A great many life forms, most of them, in fact, do not reproduce sexually. And of those that do, many switch back and forth. We even have vertebrates that switch back and forth between parthenogenic reproduction and sexual reproduction. Because what you've got at the cellular level is conjugation, which is a form of horizontal gene transfer.
Hey, you're going to have to keep it simple for us folks. Keep the word simple so we can understand what you're talking about.
Okay. So when we're talking about what you were bringing up about, like the first dog, for example, earlier on, You were talking to these people in this interview, and you're talking about fish and how we all came from the sea. And would that include dogs? You would understand that, right?
Everything comes from the sea,
Right.
all life.
So fish have eyes, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you said that the first dog was blind for millions of years, where did that come from?
Excuse me?
If dogs were descended from fish and fish have eyes, then why would dogs go around for millions of years blind and suddenly have eyes?
Well, I'd
And
like you to explain that to me because I don't understand it. I believe God made dogs to reproduce after their own kind.
Well,
He made them
that's
as
the
dogs.
problem, is everything is a kind within a kind within a kind.
Yeah.
And one kind will beget several other kinds, which can no longer interbreed with their ancestors or cousins, and that's pretty much the way that it works. I saw in a couple of interviews with you where you have been given an example of evolution, and you've dismissed it, saying, well, that's not evolution, and you can do that all you want, as long as you don't say what evolution is. And that's a very disturbing thing for me, because we have to have it defined. We have to know what evolution is. So have you been ever given a definition of what evolution is?
Yeah, there's what I call street evolution. That is, I speak to hundreds of people on the streets, and I say, tell me, do you believe man was a direct ancestor of primates? And they say, oh, yeah, I believe that. So you believe you're a primate once? Absolutely, still believe I'm a primate. Why do you believe that? I don't know. They can't explain it. So I said, well, just explain it to me. What evidence convinced you evolution is true? And all they say is fossils, and they've got faith and dating processes.
No, I don't think they're telling you they have faith. I'm certainly not telling you that I have faith, because faith is the most dishonest position it is possible to have, and so I reject it outright.
Aaron,
now, as far as why I'm
are you married, Aaron?
The reason,
Aaron,
I would say, Aaron, in fairness, Ray's going to have to ask a question now, and it's his question that he wants to ask. So
yeah, Aaron, can you hear me?
yes,
Are you married?
yes,
Do you have faith in your wife?
no.
You don't have faith in your wife?
No, I'm not going to
You don't
switch
trust her?
contexts, because you've got two different contexts here, and you're trying to switch both of them. This is a typical tactic. When you're talking
Not
about
a typical tactic. I'm saying if you got faith in your wife.
Look up in any definition, any dictionary, you're going to have two different contexts. One of them is a secure confidence in a person, place, or thing, which is based on probabilities and evidence and your understanding of it.
Do you have that sort of faith in your wife?
In that context, which is different from the religious context, I would say yes. However, when I use the word faith, I'm only using it in the alternate context that you will also find in the dictionary, where you have a firm conviction that is assumed without reason and defended against all reason. It is a belief that is independent of evidence. And no, my belief in my wife is not dependent of evidence.
Okay, can I just stop you there? That's the sort of faith I have in God. I haven't got faith He exists. I know God exists. I'm not stupid, but I have a trust in God.
You don't know that God exists.
Hang on a minute. You can't tell me what I know.
Yeah, I do. I can. Because knowledge
You cannot.
Yes, I can, because knowledge is demonstrable. It's measurable in its accuracy. If you don't know it, if you can't show it, you don't know it. You just believe that you do. That's the difference between knowledge and belief. Knowledge is justified. You can demonstrate.
Aaron, you do not have faith in your wife. You do not know your wife. You cannot demonstrate it to me. She does not exist, period.
Now you're being skeptical.
No, I'm not. I'm just telling you the type of philosophy you have.
No, I don't have that.
Yes,
because I can. Because I can show her to you. You and I can both verify it objectively.
How do I know it's your wife?
Any number of tests that we need to perform.
I don't want to perform tests on your wife, Aaron.
If you ask me to prove that my wife exists, and I ask you,
you can't do it.
Then I can certainly do it. Your greatest strength, Ray, your greatest strength, and possibly your only strength, is in pretending that you don't understand simple things. I've seen all these debates with you, and that's what you always do. You always back into an
Aaron,
assumption.
how would you prove to me your wife exists? Come on.
I could present her to you. I can show her fingerprints. I can show her a birth certificate. How would you present to me?
I'd have to have belief it's her birth certificate. I'd have to believe it's her birth certificate. How do I know? You've got to come back to faith.
Again, no, we never, ever have to go to faith. Because faith is, as I said, the most dishonest position it is possible to have.
Well, you've got no faith in your wife.
Ben, you asked me to present my wife, and I ask you to present your God. One of these people are going to step forward, and the other one's going to remain in your imagination.
Okay, now let me ask the questions, okay? It's my turn.
By all means, please.
Aaron, you're an atheist, so you believe that nothing created everything, a scientific impossibility. Is that correct?
No, I don't, as a matter of fact.
You believe something created everything?
No, I don't believe it was created.
Okay.
Now, Lawrence Krauss and I have
believe nothing was responsible for everything. Is that what you're telling me?
Let me explain this to you. I've had this argument with Lawrence Krauss, and I attended a very brilliant lecture with him where he explained the concept of nothing in 4 different ways. And it was a very complex topic, and I would just like to leave it at that he understands nothing, and I am confused by nothing, and I'm perfectly happy to stop there. However, my perspective is something similar to a Cartesian coordinate system in an asymptote wherein t equals 0. 1 second equals infinity. If you have a rupture in space-time, something equivalent to a black hole, then you have an eternity with a hypercosmic catalyst, which we will never understand. And this is what caused the inflation of the Earth, or the universe. It's not a person. It's not a creation. It certainly wasn't a magic spell. It wasn't abracadabra and it happened. And the other problem that we've got with
this
is...
Where did it come from, Aaron?
What?
Where did it come from? What was in the beginning? What caused this?
I said hypercosmic. If we have
so that was the cause. That was the first cause. It was hypercosmic?
No, that wasn't the cause. You asked for the origin.
What was the cause?
According to string theorists, it was a collision of hyperdimensional brains or membranes.
Where did they come from?
How would we know?
You
the
don't
point
know.
is, we can't assert things that we do not know as if we know them.
Just say it, Aaron. Say, I don't know. That's what most atheists end up saying.
You can't pretend to know things you cannot actually know. That would be dishonest. Just like saying you know that God exists when you can't show it.
Of course I can show it.
No, you can't. I saw you on Nightline. You failed miserably. You had an opportunity to present evidence, and what you did instead was to show a bunch of logical fallacies of circular arguments routing back to assumed conclusions. You said that you were not going to use faith, and that's all you did use.
Let me come back to my original question. You believe that nothing is responsible for everything, which is a scientific impossibility.
Right, and I don't believe that because it's a scientific impossibility. Let me explain something else to you.
Okay, just hang on a minute. I've got to get to the bottom of this before you change the subject. So you believe something is responsible for everything. It wasn't nothing. It had to be something that was the first cause. You just don't know what it is. Therefore, you're not an atheist. You're an agnostic. So it's
wrong,
because I'm not an atheist.
The definition of an atheist either. An atheist is anybody who is not convinced that an actual an actual God, same thing, really exists. If you're not convinced that...
Well, I take the definition you gave at the beginning of the program. You said an atheist is someone who don't share a belief in God. So you're an atheist. You don't have a belief in God.
Right.
Okay, so you don't have a belief in God. You don't know what created everything. You know it was something. It wasn't nothing. You just don't know what it was. It wasn't God. You know that for sure.
No, I don't know
there was
that
something.
for sure, because I don't pretend to know things I don't really know or that no one even can know, which is why you can't say that there's a God.
Aaron, you have to let me speak. You have to let me finish, okay? It is unfair of you to say you don't know to me because that's assuming you have...
You don't know where the universe came from. You don't know that it was a God. You have no reason to believe that it is a God. You believe it without reason, which means it's faith, which means it's a dishonest.
Aaron, you've got to let me speak, okay? Or it's just one-sided. All I keep hearing is your voice every time I try to say something. You cannot say nobody knows. That's what's called an absolute statement. To say nobody knows, that means you have absolute knowledge of the 6 billion people on the face of this earth to know that nobody knows. All you can do is say, I, Aaron, don't know. I have no idea that made everything or brought everything into being. Right. There was something. It just wasn't God.
And you don't know that.
And that's where you come down to. You're an agnostic.
No,
gentlemen,
because you don't know what an agnostic is.
Gentlemen,
doesn't know.
Gentlemen, I just want to break in here real quick, and I am going to dispense with the public service announcements and due to the lost time at the beginning of the show. And I will invite callers to call in and try to stimulate some of this discussion with some questions. And it looks like we got somebody calling in now. So if I can go ahead and take that call, we're going to put them online.
Okay, 1 second. I got to answer his question. An agnostic is one who considers it impossible for mortals to have knowledge of the supernatural, specifically where it pertains to the properties or nature of God. Most atheists are, in fact, agnostic. Most theists, though not all of them, are Gnostic. There are some agnostic theists, and there are some Gnostic atheists.
So we agree. Thank you.
No, we don't.
Okay.
You said that if I don't know how the universe came to be, then I'm not an atheist, that I'm agnostic, which is not correct. Whether I know how the universe came to be or not does not call me agnostic in either case.
Gentlemen, I want to go ahead and take the call. Caller, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you have a question for the guest tonight?
Well, I had a comment.
Please.
I heard Ray assuming that the cause was an animate object he wants to call God. There's no evidence of any animate object causing the universe to exist. All the evidence is of inanimate objects causing inanimate objects and animate objects to exist. Ray Comfort's theology is as likely as being accurate as...
Paul, I don't think Ray or I can hear anything of what our caller is asking.
Okay. I'll go ahead and pass that along. He's saying that Ray's position is that you have God, who is animate, making animate things happen, and he is not aware of anything other than a God, or is not aware of anything doing that other than people. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, my thought on that is that this is where the supernatural blends with the natural, and whenever God reaches his hand into this plane, he should pull his arm out dripping with physics. He should leave evidence. We should not be required to believe on faith. The only reason that we are required to believe such things on faith is because they are not true, because there's only one thing in the universe that needs faith, and that's a bad salesman.
Ray? Your take on that?
We don't need faith to believe in God. The whole of nature screams of the genius of his handiwork. We can't make a grain of sand from nothing.
No, excuse me. No,
hey,
that's
Aaron,
not
I've got
correct.
to speak. This isn't fair. If every time I speak you butt in and drown out what I'm saying, what I say makes no sense.
Okay.
So, we don't need faith to believe in God because the whole of creation, the whole of nature is ordered. It isn't a semblance of order. It has order. From the atom through to the universe, we see the genius of God's creative hand.
Chaos.
47 happened by accident. A 747 has seats, it has air conditioning, it has television sets in it, it has lighting in it, it has wings, and all these things show us there's a plane maker, and the whole of creation, the whole of nature shows us there's a God. When it comes to eternal salvation, that is finding everlasting life, that's when you exercise an implicit trust, a confidence in God. Not a faith that he believes. I believed in God before I was a Christian. When I became a Christian, I trusted.
You match the criteria for apes, and you match the criteria
Speak for yourself,
monkeys.
Aaron. I'm not an ape. I was made in the image of God.
can prove it.
Moral being.
We
I
can
don't want
prove
to.
it.
That's ridiculous.
Yes, it can.
You see, Aaron,
I've
I
got
don't
3
believe in
videos that will
evolution.
prove
I
it
think
to
the
you.
greatest oxymoron on the face of this earth is to use the word science along with evolution. Evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. You have to receive it by blind faith.
A fairy tale?
It's unprovable. It's not been proved.
A
I
fairy
don't
tale.
believe it. I used to believe it, but evolution is ridiculous.
Ray, you told several people you thought a fish, a individual fish, a male fish, which is also wrong because it would be a fish.
From nothing.
So, excuse me. That does not fit evolution at all, but it fits Genesis like a T.
Aaron, if anything, it fits a fairy tale. It's this magic wand of nothing creating everything,
Magic wand. You
and then
mean in
everyone,
Leviticus, where you dip the
all
wand,
this creation
blood,
of flowers, birds, the sun, the moon, the stars, the seasons, the marvels of the human eye, the incredible fact that there's so many, everything's got male and female, all happened without any planning,
everything.
without an intelligent mind. It's just this fairy godmother of evolution made it all.
Of arguing against evolution, that it would be helpful if you understood what it is.
It's
I know
been 40
everybody.
Years. 40 years I've been talking about evolution, not a decade.
And you've never gotten it right. And if that is the case, then it's not a surprising thing, unless otherwise specified. The scientific context always refers to an explanation of biodiversity via population mechanics. Put another way, it is descent with inherent genetic.
Subject is this. Evolution, to me, is not an issue.
You're cutting out on me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You were cutting out on me, and I missed a lot of what you're saying, and that's one of the reasons I didn't answer you. I do apologize for that. You and I are going to die. The God that created all things offers us everlasting life. We'll end up in hell whether we believe in him or not. He is holy and perfect. He set aside a day in which he'll judge the world in righteousness. If we die in our sins and God gives us justice, we'll end up in hell whether we believe in him or not. The standard is absolute perfection and morality. If you look on a woman and lust for her, you commit adultery with her in your heart. If you lie, find yourself in hell. That's how high his standard is. But he's rich in mercy, and he provided a Savior so we could have our sins forgiven. One who died on the cross for us and rose again on the third day. And now God says if you repent and trust in Jesus, he'll reveal himself to you. Of course.
Okay. Let me just make sure I understand that. I mean, so you don't think that it's dishonest to assert as fact that which is not evidently true. You don't seem to have a problem with that, where I certainly would. I would call that a lie. So, I mean, so you in your vandalism of Charles Darwin's definitive work, you gave, I think it was 1844, you said that Darwin had conceived or handed the book that he was going to propose for his theory of natural selection. He handed that to his wife, and that several years after that, 7 or 8 years, whatever it was, that his daughter died, and he had this crisis of faith, as it were. Now, that's the correct chronology, and yet several months later, you get on Pat Robertson's show and you tell Pat Robertson that Darwin's daughter died, and as a result of that, he created this, as you put it, fairy tale for grown-ups, getting the chronology wrong, and you know better. Now, you know that's not what really happened.
Yes, I do.
But that's what you
crisis
said.
of faith, and it caused him to turn against God.
But he said that he made up the theory of evolution.
Cut out there now.
After.
I missed. Sorry, you cut out. Say that again.
You said that he made up the theory of evolution after his daughter died as a result of that, as a matter of fact. But you know that's not what really happened.
I didn't say he made up the theory of evolution. You didn't make it
Created
up.
a fairy tale for grown-ups, same thing.
That's right. And the
even
catalyst
though
was his lack of faith in God.
Every definition of fairy tale would apply to the biblical legend. Everything that you present to support your argument is completely flawed. We know that Genesis 1 and 2, which contradict each other, are plagiarized elder mythology from Epic of Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish and a couple of others.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
I've read them.
Because you have faith in history books. You have faith in history books, that's all.
I don't have faith in history
yes, you
books.
Do. You believe them.
If you believe something because of evidence, that's not faith. If you believe something without evidence, which is what you're talking about, that's faith.
Okay.
So
you believe the history books?
We know I doubt them. But I don't doubt everything because I'm not unreasonable. I don't have to doubt whether my wife exists, and I don't have to doubt whether yours exists so that I can justify something that I know on some level doesn't exist, which is what you're doing. See, when you have the one definition of faith, which is the secure confidence in a person, place, or thing, I have that, and you don't, because you can present any question you want. I will never cower. I do not fear truth.
Ray, the last word here. just let
That's
everybody.
all we're going to get?
I
wasn't even warmed up yet.
Well, that may be that we need to look at doing a second episode then.
Well, why don't you just keep Aaron on the show? He doesn't need a guest.
Just let me. I'm going to give you the last word, Ray, but I want to just make a quick announcement. The announcement is that next week we're going to have on Jeff Patterson, Courage to Resist, and the GI Rights Hotline. They'll be speaking about how all is not well in the military, conscientious objectors, the growing suicide rates amongst GIs, GIs' rights to refuse to fight for moral and conscious reasons, and much more. So I definitely want people to tune in next week for that discussion. But Ray, I want to go ahead and give you the last word. And, what are your thoughts about this discussion and what Aaron had to say? And then we're going to have to wrap it up here in about a minute.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Aaron for speaking with me. I would like to say I hate wars. I think wars are terrible, and I'm not a pacifist. If someone was going to attack my wife, I'd protect her.
Was locked out of listening tonight. This will go up on a podcast either tonight or early tomorrow morning. And depending on the feedback, we may have to do a round two if you're both up for it, but we'll consider that after I talk to both of you one-on-one. And for ladies and gentlemen, this is Radio Paul, and I am signing off tonight on Radio Rants. And I wish you all well, and I will see you next week. Thank you, guests, for Ray Comfort and AronRa.